Right after my course, I did my final year short film, which became my kind of reel, which I started applying. That time, I didn't make a dedicated reel as such. The short film itself was a reel for myself. I started applying. Thankfully, there was a position open, which I applied as an animator, but they were hiring for some other thing which I was totally not aware of. But they said, "Hey, do you want to come and give a test and see?" So overnight, I prepared for the test, figured out what I had to do, went to Mumbai, gave the test, and then I got a job. I was located out of the Hyderabad office, and that is where I started off. I started off as a match mover. That's mostly to do with camera tracking. I'll explain you when I do the departments, but I don't have anything to draw, but I'll explain you. But what it is, it's like if any of you used Nuke or those kind of softwares, you have to do like a camera track to integrate any kind of graphics or any kind of CG onto your plate, right? These days you do a lot of that in news broadcast room where they show you people standing in cricket grounds or stuff like that. So anything to do with the camera motion where you're tracking it, it's called camera tracking. So that's what I started off with. From there onwards, I did a bit of lighting. I did a lot of on-set work. So it was more of an organic growth for me in that company, and I was part of some good projects. One of the big projects I was part of was Light of Fire, which was 2013 or 12, I think. And I got a chance to visit Taiwan to be on set for that. Then part of the shoot happened in India, in Pondicherry and a bit of south for the India part of it. From there, the studio closed down after that for business reasons, and then I shifted to Bangalore for another company called Movie Picture Company. It's also another big visual effects company in Hollywood. So they have an office in Bangalore, which is under the Technicolor brand, and I've been working there since then. And then recently I got transferred to the Montreal office. Currently I work as a layout lead, which mostly deals with pre-visualization and setting up the sequence, blocking and everything. I'll explain in terms, but mostly setting up the first pass of visualization of a sequence of the movie is what we do. Right? That is when they're toying with ideas, they're trying to figure out, okay, what the tone of the sequence is going to be like, how we're going to visualize it and all that. So that's what I'm involved in. Let me just take out my notes. So that's mostly about it. I was recently part of this year's in the Oscars. There were two movies which were nominated for my company. One was Lion King and one was 1917. And I was part of both. For Lion King, I was on set in Kenya around 2017 when we were doing initial pre-production. So I had gone there for shooting a lot of references. It was like almost month and a half kind of shoot. It was mostly in Kenya and parts of Africa. And I did a lot of on-set photography, stuff for collecting. Though the movie is completely CG, nothing has been shot on film or on camera. But to build that CG environment, you need to correct a lot of references. So I was part of that. And then last entire year, I was in this project for 1917. It's a World War epic. I was surprised myself when it got an Oscar because we were not completely, like, it was new to us because we were thinking that Lion King is a bigger contender just for the sheer amount of work it has involved. But I think the movie 1917 was nominated for the best film, so it automatically kind of the Academy works in a different way. It's mostly kind of they look for more content driven stories where visual effects has a contribution. So if you see the history of Academy, it has nothing to do with which movie has more VFX or more. Avengers has never got a VFX in its history. So it has nothing to do with that. Movies like 1917 or Hugo or Ex Machina, like very offbeat films, which are mostly concept driven. That is what mostly ends up getting Academy. So thankfully 1917 got. It has a lot of work, no doubt about that, because mostly the film is a very, I don't know how many of you have seen it. If you get a chance, do see it. It's in theaters right now. It's a technical prowess. It's like they are going ahead and showing off all the technicalities they can in this film. It's insanely meticulously made. I mean, it's a mammoth of a task to shoot such a film and to give it a look of one single shot. So that's what the movie is about. So yeah, so that's about it. I was here for a 1 month leave. I came here for some work. I met ma'am and then she said, let's do a session. So we okay, for sure, we'll do. Cool. So coming to visual effects, the history of visual effects is not as old as cinema, but the manipulation of images, the history of that has been very long. Right? We have been doing this in bits and pieces for a very long time. You can see some black and white Godzilla versus King Kong movies, which have toymation or those kind of set prosthetic work. That also is visual. Any special effects was called visual effects in the olden days. So any practical on-set special effects, also like puppets, or there are companies which still specializes in that, or makeup or any kind of prosthetics, that also classifies as special effects. Off late, since it's got a very developed, it's been defined pretty much. Now it's been categorized. So there's on-set practical effects, there's special effects, and there's visual effects. So there are categories. So now visual effects mostly is what you do on a system or on a computer, or it's mostly done in CG, right? So that's what visual effects categorizes as. Pretty much today, there is no movie which is made without visual effects. I mean, I am not aware of any film which will not have someone touching the film, even if it comes down to color correction, right? Which was really done very well. It was almost like a Nat Geo or Discovery level documentary style they had gone for. So that was pretty amazing. There was this movie called Irishman. That was DAG process. Yeah, that was kind of a new technology they were trying out, and that successfully went through very well. So that was nominated for that. 1917, just for the technicality of shooting it or making it look like as if it was a one single shot. And then there was Avengers Endgame that had to be there, I think, but sadly it didn't win. But again, when the work was phenomenal, it's just that they felt that it didn't contribute to the story as much, which I feel it did. Cool. But the work on Avengers was, for me, it was like, I know it's a very massy kind of populist film, but having a central antagonist being completely CG gives enough confidence that yes, now you can bring back a lot of those villains from your comic books back into real life with full kind of, we've seen CG villains before, but it was never very convincing. But to get emotionally attached to Thanos and trying to see the world or see the perspective from his angle of how he feels the balance of the universe is, you got invested in his emotions just because he was convincing enough, right? His ear, the eye motion, and there was this company called Digital Domain who did majority of Thanos. So maybe you should check out his making. It was insane. The amount of R&D they did to just make that character was like really, really good. So visual effects. So there are a lot of studios in the world. Primarily, there are like big four, and the number is like that because the studios are like that. There are only 5 big studios who make movies. I mean, there are 4 now because Disney took over Fox. So Disney is the biggest player, no doubt about that. Then you have Paramount, there are Sony, and then you have Warner Brothers and Amblin. These are mostly the 5 big players. So they are the only ones who are making films, and there are these vendors like visual effects vendors like MPC, ILM, Double Negative, Frame Store, Method, and then there are these smaller tier 2 studios like Rising Sun and Lola Effects, and there are like multiple of these. So these are the big VFX vendors who work for these companies. So it's like pretty much any other business. You pitch for it, and you get work based on either the build you did, or the test you did, or your previous relationship with the studio, that you might have done successful projects with them and they are comfortable in assigning you that project. A project can range from, it never happens that one movie gets done. It's very rare that it happens that one movie gets done by one vendor completely. Like 1917 was, I think in my experience, 1 or 2 projects which I've done, which was completely done by MPC, just because it had to be one seamless film. You can't, it will be a nightmare to share that sequence across, or the film across multiple vendors. But mostly you will see that the studios will distribute the project across multiple vendors. The reason being, a lot of the studios are specialized in doing certain aspects and they're very good at it. They have a very advanced pipeline for it, so obviously they are more cost competitive to that. Certain studios are very good, like ILM is known for its creature work and character work and that kind of work. Digital Domain is for that. MBC is known for its animal work or effects, big destruction, city destruction, and Godzilla, King Kong kind of movies. And then you have smaller vendors who can do a lot of like crowd work and stuff like that. So based on the need, they kind of do, and there is obviously risk management, right? They don't want to put all their eggs into one basket. So risk management, so that in case the project gets getting screwed up, they can shift around the shops and still get the work done. So across these studios, within the studios, then you have multiple departments who are specializing in doing. Delhi, as such, I'm coming to the location of it because Delhi doesn't have a big established VFX studios. I know that there are certain studios which are opening up, which are picking up work that not directly from the studio but from another company as an offload vendor, and that kind of business model is started to pop up in India, which is completely fine because a lot of studios are now, it requires so much of manpower that they don't want to build such a large scale studio. Like my company itself, individual departments were going so big that one department itself was becoming like the size of a studio. So what they did is they're bifurcating the business by either handing it off to another studio itself or making another sister company within their company to manage it much better. So a lot of offloading of work happens. At an average, I can say that a project lasts for around 1.5 to 2 years. I'm talking about Hollywood here. I'll come to Bollywood later. So 1.5 to 2 years is general time, production time of a film. In that, the visual effects will last for a year almost because majority of the time now goes in post-production of film. The actual production is very short. If you see the entire schedule of a film for let's say 2 years, there will be a massive pre-production, and pre-production can last for years because there's a lot of concept and pitches and it gets bounced from director to director. So I'm not taking that into account, but actual pre-production will take around 6 to 8 months. In the production, they'll wrap up in like the shoot itself, they'll wrap up in 2 to 3 months. That's it. They don't want, because that involves a lot of money, crew. So they'll plan it to the T, right? Everything is planned to the date. They know on which date, which hour. Like for 1917, the actual the movie was shot in like 80-85 days, I think. That's what I'm aware of. So, and then the post, which will go for almost a year, which takes time because it's a lot of idea development and stuff like that. So, in a project like Lion King, it was around. Lion King was also another project which MPC did completely. It was not shared between other vendors. That had, within my company, just on visual effects, that had close to 2,000 people working on it. And for 1917, it was around 600. So, just like letting you know the scale of how many people involved, just in visual effects. So, as an exercise, what you guys can do is next time when you watch a film, just sit through the credits. That's the best exercise to know how departments function. I mean, I just sit through the credits and you'll get an idea of how you yourself can mentally know that okay, how big a sound department is in a film, how big is the production team on a film, how big is the visual effects team, how big are the runners, how big are the gaffers, like technicians, catering, everything is credited there, right? Like everything is credited there. So that helps you to gauge that, okay, how much amount of workforce is required to plan, make or execute a movie like this. That just gives you a sheer idea. So nowadays, if you see Avengers end title, it's just visual effects. Like that movie has been done by like some 20 plus studios if you sit through the entire credit. Like right from studios in India to Middle East to Europe to US, UK, everyone has touched and worked on it. It's a mammoth film. Nobody can put no one single studio can pull off a movie like that. And to count the names in that, I'm sure there are like 5,000 people mentioned in that credit itself. And that too, the studios are reluctant in putting everyone's name because the length of the films get increased. But internally, there are always way more than what has been credited. So, that's what you should do. Sit through the credits. You will see certain companies, they credit people as per the department also. So you will see people are created under animation department, layout, lighting, effects. I'm using these terminologies assuming that you're aware of these departments. But yeah, feel free to ask if you're not. So coming to departments, every VFX studio, more or less, it's a tier 1 or A-list studio will have internal departments, and the size of the department depends on obviously what kind of work they're doing. So typically how it gets branched off is there's a 2D side of it and there is a 3D side of it. 2D mostly being roto, prep and comp, whichever has to do with direct image manipulation, where you're just working in 2 dimension, just X and Y coordinate, you're not doing any 3D work. That's your 2D department. So roto, prep, comp, editorial, DI, color, these are all under 2D. And then you have 3D branch where it starts off with match move, then it goes to layout, animation, lighting, effects, tech anim, then the renders come and get compiled at compositing level. So these are the major branches where every you take up any studio, it will function in these 2 ways. Now all these departments are sized based on their input. Like a department like comp, lighting will be huge because they
How does differentiate Kabir for the students? What
Sure.
is it? What are the just one line?
Sure.
What are the functions of
Sure,
the
department. Yeah, for
roto,
sure.
prep, etc.
So actually, is there a possibility to get a
Whiteboard.
It's too late for that, right? Oh, sorry about that. Okay, no problem. Okay, let me just mentally tell you if anyone wants to take a note. So you have roto and prep, which are like masks, right? People who make masks. Anything to put behind something in layer, you have to mask out the foreground. I mean, that's a very basic compositing technique, right? So that's mostly roto. And then prep is whenever you want to remove a certain object from the plate or add the object in the plate, it's prep. Mostly it is done in Nuke or Silhouette, or there are these advanced softwares which are done to use it. But anything to do with the manipulation of the plate mostly comes in that. So just to give you an example, like on the set, you have a guy who needs to have a prosthetic. He is a Terminator and he needs to have a robotic arm. Right? So on the set, the guy will be wearing a green patch, which they'll try to key out, right? And if whatever is not keyed out, or say after the key out, so say this is a shot and they have to key out the green patch. Once they key out, they need to recreate the background, right? Or else all you'll see a big patch because there's no information there. The camera or the image has not captured information behind it. So then the prep artist will come and with image manipulation techniques will recreate the background flow for me, right? Probably the effect is that he doesn't have an arm. Yeah, that's a better example. Rather than having a metallic arm, he doesn't have an arm. He's a specially able person, right? So what they will completely remove this, and it's a moving scene, right? So the character is moving. So every frame, wherever you're removing his arm or painting, the prep leads and prep suits are mostly with the experience of 8 to 10 years. So that takes a lot of time. So that's the 2D aspect of it, and then the 3D aspect of it is first. So you need to categorize that there are certain departments who work at a build level, where they are building assets which will be used individually in the shot, right? So something like a character, it doesn't get built for every shot. You build a character, you rig it, you model it, you texture it, and that is going to you look at it, and that's going to get used in 500 shots of the film. So they are working at a build level. So that is mostly your assets department, which includes modeling, texturing, look dev, rigging, right? So they all collectively work together to build an asset, and their fundamentals of building it is they will build it to a neutral lighting condition. So say my character can be in varied lighting conditions, right? He can be outdoor, he can be indoor, he can be in front of something. I cannot bake that lighting information in the character itself because he needs to be changing his environment. So they do it in a very generic, like a neutral lighting condition, mostly white light. But then when you place it, you know how it's going to look. There is a consistency of its look. So that's what the asset department does. So modeling is obviously the ones who model. It starts off always with a ZBrush sculpt, which is a concept sculpt. If you're aware, ZBrush is a is a modeling software, but it doesn't. You are not manipulating the vertex directly. You're painting displacements. It's like a clay, and that you can then take it into Maya or any topologizing software to topologize it into a mesh. So most of the sculptors or the sculptors or the visualizers will first do the initial sculpt in ZBrush or Mudbox. From there, it goes to modeling, which they will take that model and they will start modeling the mesh, which is with the proper mesh flow. That is what gets passed to rigging, which then adds the joints, the whole muscle system, the whole everything. I'll show you a breakdown to show that. But they are the ones who are taking care of the entire anatomy of the character and how it moves. Now, for certain things, it's pretty straightforward because you have a lot of reference, like animals, humans. There is so much of R&D which has been done in the medical field that's what people refer to. Like in my field, we refer to a lot of papers being published to understand how we need to integrate that in my work. Right? Just to give you an example, how much research goes into it on Lion King. During the production itself, one of my supervisors, like seniors, he was digging into the color palette of animals, right? The coloring of your skin. So there is a paper out there, a research which says that if it's a 8-bit color palette, which is your 256, 0 to 255 color value, in nature, the palette only exists, say, something from a value of 110 to 220. That's it. Beyond that, from 220 to 255, there is nothing which in nature exists. Same down below. I'm just giving you arbitrary numbers, but that's what the paper said, that below 110 to 0, there's no color which exists in nature. It's only between these hues you will find the palette. During the production itself, we have to go back and truncate all our color values of all the existing characters so that it reacts correctly to the light. Because we are going for a very accurate physical based lighting. So the look will only come when you're like super accurate to nature itself, right? So I'm just giving an example of how much research goes into this. So they do a lot of I'll show you a lot of anatomy study, bone study, muscle study, and that's how they develop the character. And again, it's a team. Whenever you see something like this and someone giving a speech, don't think he's the one doing it. He's the last person who would have ever touched a shot. He's just the guy who's coordinated. Like my VFX who went and who took the Oscar for 1917, he's never done a shot for last I think 10 years. He has not touched it. He himself is very scared of doing it. But it's just that he knows it. He knows the basics of it. He's so good at it that he can question you to make you doubt your own work. And that's the quality these guys have. Even with directors. None of these directors or these like this. Sam Mendes is the director of this movie. He's made like all the classics like American Beauty and the James Bond films and all. He doesn't know visual effects in his own. Whatever I'm telling you in terms of technicality or Maya or stuff like that, he doesn't know the softwares. But their understanding of the basics is so strong that they can question you to correct, doubt yourself. Yeah, he's right probably. And he was doing that. Like a lot of times he used to question me like there was a scene where if you see the film, there's a tank which was kept in the middle of the no man's land. And that was a very late addition to the film where he felt that when the camera is tracking against them, we were not feeling like it was looking pretty flat and pale. So just in one of the reviews, we are 2 months away from delivery, and just in the middle of the review, say, I would like to see a tank in the middle of that pit. I'm like, okay, fuck, we have to add a tank now. So suddenly we went back to our research team and asked them, okay, what were that kind of tanks which are there? Then we came to know that these Mark II special tanks which are there. And but how it has to be placed, right? It has to have a story behind it. You can't place a tank just in the middle of the ground, right? It needs to look like it has been in a war. It got hit by something and then it got plowed into the thing, right? So all that is what a director can guide you with. I'm just giving you I'll keep giving you a lot of examples like this. Cool. So that's what his experience lies with. Then within these departments, there are hardcore specialists who have been doing this for years, and they are only doing that. So a VFX soup might not know how to rig a character, but he knows what he's looking for, right? So I'll show you a Lion King reel to give you an idea.
So then you have the riggers who make the character, and then you have the texture painters who paint the textures, right? Now texture painting and look dev is very different. A lot of people get confused. A lot of people are both, like they can texture and look dev, but there are specialists who can only do texturing, and there are especially people who are only doing look devs. What's the key difference is, when you're painting a texture, you're just painting the color value, right? So if this is my object, the color value is the texture, and the spots of dark and shades of brown are what my texture is. But the property of the material is wood. And if it was metal, it would have been very different in terms of how it's reflecting light, how it's looking to me. That's look development, where you're actually defining the material of how it reacts. Material is what it defines of how it reacts to light. So wood, concrete, metal, all of it reacts to light in a very different way. I can't paint it in the best looking wood texture, but if I apply a wrong material to it, it might look like a metal wood. Right? So that's the difference. A lot of times you will see that if your textures are all, it looks plasticky, right? Though you cannot find a problem with the color of the object. It is exactly looking like a tree or how a tree is supposed to look. It looks very plastic, just because they have not been able to crack the look dev of it, of how it needs to react to light. So that's a department. So that is the department. That asset department is working at a build level, and then you have departments who are working on individual shots. So now you come to roto, match move, layout, animation, effects. They are working on individual shots, and there the teams are much bigger. Assets is also bigger, but comparatively these teams are much bigger. And then you go into a shot development. So you start off with match move, which is like people who are doing the camera tracks, who will their first job is to recreate the actual camera motion on set in a virtual environment, so that you can line up things and everything looks in the right perspective. Perspective is the key here, right? If you don't get the right perspective, everything will look a bit fake. And that's what happens when you see these news channels, right? They're standing on a cricket field, the commentator, and the perspective of the field is very off. It doesn't look like they're integrated or they're, right? It doesn't look integrated for a lot of reasons. Obviously, they're never able to match the lighting of it. But the first problem is the perspective. Or I have seen, like during the election process, they were standing next to India Gate. The India Gate was in a different perspective and the angle was in a different perspective, because you're not lining up the camera of your CG to your plate properly, right? So that's what match move does. Then you do something called layout, which is your first blocking of the scene. So we get mostly storyboards or previews or animatics. I'm sure you would have learned this during your process. It's the most fundamental step of any content creation, right? You need to do a draft of your idea before you go all in and start spending money on finishing the product. So every client, every director will first try to see the first draft of his idea, which is the most, we call it the cheap shot or the cheaper version of the shot. And that's what layout does. So if it's a shot of, say, let me think of something straightforward. Like a car chase, right? There's a story. A car chase has to happen for like 4 minutes. You need to block that first. Now, a lot of time there are specialized studios who are doing this now. There are like companies like Third Floor and Halon who specialize in doing this, because generally they don't want to get the previews done by a full company because it costs more money. There are these studios who are doing this day in, day out. But that is where they block the idea. So, okay, we have to plan a car chase, right? Who's chasing whom? Which perspective are we showing it from? Are we showing it from the perspective of the protagonist, where probably you have a lot of camera angles inside the car looking back at who's chasing him? Or we're looking at it from a third angle, or we're looking at it from the police, where we have aerial shots of the chopper and far long lenses to see how things are worked out. So these are the things they kind of nail down those things. You get a cut and you start blocking your ideas with the correct assets. Now, whatever they used during that time, the car, the building, everything is very rough. Right? Now you need to replace it, what you have built with the asset department, and start plugging it into your shot. So everything is being worked on parallelly. And that's what layout does. We do the first phase. There's no lighting, there's no texturing, everything is very flat shaded, flat colored, just to get approval on his idea. When he's okay with it, so that's always the first milestone. Whenever production does a schedule, you see the first milestone is your layout/blocking. Once he likes the layout, then it goes into something called pre-animation or pre-blocking of animation, where there are 2 keyframes. because that is where you are doing the acting, the performance of the character, right? So if it's a simple shot of a character entering into a room and just going and taking a seat here, that can be done in 1,000 variations, right? It depends on what mood he is in. Is he very angry to come and sit down? Is he probably doesn't want to sit down, right? There's a lot of hooks to how the shot is going to work out. So they keep doing iterations and keep showing it to the director. There's a conversation, and once they log that idea, they log and final the animation, and that is when it goes to tech animation, which starts doing the secondary animation of if he is wearing a jacket, there'll be like simulations to do cloth sim. If there is hair, there'll be fur simulations, muscle simulations. All that will happen after that. Only when the animation gets logged, right? Then it goes to effects. If he is touching something, right, or if he is hitting something, so there'll be some kind of dust proof or something, like just to show environment interaction. There'll be another department interacting, like. To give you an example at what detail they work at, there was a shot we were doing in Incredible Hulk, where he's standing in the rain, and obviously it's CG rain, it's pouring down his body, and there was a closer shot of him looking at the actors. So the splits of water were going down his face, right, his anatomical face. And when it came here, the director gave us a feedback that he wants, since it's a muscular structure, right, his whole body, there are nerves, he wants the water to split into like how rivers split, right? And that's a very natural thing you see ever. Water trickle down, it will never travel in one single thing, right? It will always split down. So those kind of feedbacks we were getting. So that is the department which is going to work on that, effects. And then it will go into lighting, which is actually going to light the scene, which is where your final interaction with the plate happens. They're going to place lights, they're going to render it, and mostly these days everything has shifted to physically based lighting, which is like they are actually mimicking the real lighting physics into the softwares. So this RenderMan, Mantra, or any Arnold, these are the like popular renderers these days. All of them are physically based. They actually behave. There's no cheat. Earlier we used to cheat, like 5 years, 10 years down the line, we were cheating a lot because these were very hardware intensive calculations. You require huge render farms to render a shadow or a occlusion pass. But now with the advent of technology and you have cloud computing, everyone prefers to do like physically accurate lighting. So the light and the software is actually behaving how a physical light works. It originates from the source, it goes, bounces against the material, and comes and hits you based on your material property. It will again reflect from your body, all that. That is a department. It's a very cost-intensive, resource-intensive department because that is where the bulk of the cost is related to. Because you are doing film in 2K, 4K, whatever your resolution is, and whatever you're rendering it in layers so that you can give compositing the final ability to nudge and tweak things. If they want to lift the shadow a bit up, or they want to increase the key light, or they want to increase the fill, stuff like that. So everything is done in passes. And finally, it gets handed off to compositing, which takes all these layers and boom, puts it together. Does the final color correction. It's again a very tedious job because it requires a lot of time, and that is when a shot gets done.
Which software do you use for compositing?
Nuke.
Nuke Studio.
Nuke is like an industry standard for 2D now. It's pretty everywhere it's used. So if any of you want to branch to the 2D side of it, your hands on Nuke should be like really nice. You don't need to know nobody will know the entire software. Yeah, just to let you know, there's a myth that I don't know the entire software, so I don't know what I'm doing. But nobody is looking for. There are specialists in Nuke itself who specialize in, say, prep aspect of it, or comp aspect of it, or particle generation aspect of it. So it's a huge application. It's the same as Maya, right? Nobody know. I don't know Maya. Though I'm a Maya, like my predominant software is Maya itself, but I specialize more in the camera aspect of Maya. Camera, a bit of rigging, but there are like n number of other things in Maya which I've never opened and seen for years because I don't use it on my day-to-day basis. So yeah, that's how. So I'll show you a breakdown of Lion King. This might not have the 2D aspect of it because it's a completely CG film, right? So just whatever I spoke about the 3D world, just now you can correlate, and yeah, you'll get a sense of what I was talking about. Every swipe of breakdown you see, just think of it, there is a department involved in that. It's not one person doing it. There's a department involved in that, which can be from 10 people to hundreds of people. I mean, Lion King was a project because it was fully CG. But not very often you come across a project like that where there will be still actors, there will be still like plate based movies. By plate I mean actual shots where you actually shoot actor and you have to enhance the subject. So speaking of Lion King, like now, as I was saying, right, every aspect of it, like just think of lighting, right? I don't know how much of lighting have you covered yet, but in a very simple term, you can fire up a software, put a key light, put a fill, it can be a spot, it can be an area light, whatever, and you can light a subject, right? And if I give you a brief, it's a night shot or it's a evening shot, or it's a sunset, sunrise, you will study certain aspects of it and try to light it. But then start thinking about those scenes. To light the entire scene. Here you have seen the entire scene of a giraffe running on a wild. You have to light the entire scene. So obviously you need a sunlight, you need your bounce lights, you need to figure out where your main light source is, which part of the sky the sun is, how the shadows are reacting, all that. So nothing of this happens by someone's imagination. It's a lot of reference study, right? And that's what you will realize. Nothing gets made without a reference. Yes, the ideas are always in brain, but when you have to actually ideate it into something, it has to be a study of a lot of references. And all you will see when you go to a studio is people looking at a reference and doing something. It's very difficult for someone to know what a texture of a tiger is or how the scale of a tiger looks like, right? Nobody is going to paint that from his mind that, I know how a fur of a lion looks like, let me start painting it from scratch. Never. There's like, I know I went on the shoot for Lion King in like more than a month. We captured around 20 terabytes of reference images and videos, right from everything, right? So the main things I used to do is like, texturing is like pretty much these days nobody hand paints a texture, right? It's all taken from a photograph, projected onto your model, and then you paint out or take out the specular and other kind of aspects of it to get as flat shaded texture you can get. Everyone does that. None of these textures are painted by hand. It's going to take ages to do that if someone starts painting a rock, like every speck and detail. So what it means is someone has gone ahead and done massive research of rocks pieces. So the main Pride rock which you see where Rafiki picks up Simba, that rock itself is made up of 3 references from the actual places in Africa, where there is one part which is jutted out like this, there's one part which is like that. They have taken and combined it, and all the rocks which are made, nobody has hand modeled it. Nobody can go and start modeling rocks, right? Because okay, that's a good point. So you are doing something based on fantasy, right? Not on nature. For that also you will have references, right? So when you see characters like say Godzilla, right? Obviously there's no Godzilla which exists that I can take a reference from, but then it's a mix of a lizard, kind of a reptile. You have to break down your references. So when it comes to futuristic films also, it will be always a reference of something. So if you're taking like a building, right? What is it? What is your core reference? What kind of city are you looking at? Like we did a movie called Blade Runner 2049. It had a lot of those kind of cityscapes. We also did a movie called Ghost in the Shell, right? GST. So that had a lot of those futuristic environments. But that has to be based. So you look out for references. So probably I can look out an image of Hong Kong, right? Very futuristic, tall building, and then go and start enhancing it based on my ideas. That okay, I take Hong Kong, but what if the entire building is a neon signboard or a LCD screen? Then you start replacing elements in that. Then you think, okay, you have flying cars. So how does the entire traffic of a flying car or the traffic management of a flying car works? Obviously, you can't randomly start placing things, but you have to build your things based on references. So that's all. So if I'm looking at flying cars, then I will look at, say, levitating trains or magnetic, based trains, which are there in the current technology. Then take a bit and piece of that and try to stick it. Everyone does that. Like if you look at any concept painter or any art director. They start off with something like, I know, like for Lion King, we started off with are a bunch of. So what they do is they take the script. First, the script gets decided. Then they break down the script based on location. Okay, this is happening at the center of the jungle. This is happening at a waterfall. This is happening at the sunset. And based on that, they do artworks just by a team of artists who sit and do artworks. Those artworks are also based on references. They will look at a waterfall image to paint a waterfall. They will look at a mountain image and paint a mountain. And mostly it's Photoshop manipulation. They look at the tutorials of any matte painters, right? They start off with images, like exact images, and then they take and manipulate it to make something out of it. Then those artworks get approved, where in the sense that the client or the director looks at it and says, yes, this is the kind of world I'm aiming for. Now let's get into production. Which means now if you build an environment, you build an image, now you need to build that in 3D. So every aspect of a tree, a rock, a grass patch, grass, plant, leaves, bushes, everything has to be now gone and searched for. Right? So if I'm recreating Africa, I cannot go and start shooting my references in my garden outside, right? Because the flora and fauna here is way different from what is there. So that is when you go to those actual places. There's a whole production team involved in doing a recce of the place which is closest to your concept, right? So that is when you go and then you start collecting. So how the rocks were done? They were done by a process called photogrammetry. It's pretty common these days, where you can take images of any object from multiple locations. It creates a 3D model. You get apps on your phone which can do that these days, right? You put an object, like whatever you want to scan, and you take photos, like minimum like 18-20 photos and a 360, give it in the app and it processes and creates a 3D model out of that, right? That's what every rock is done like. So in that process itself, we can capture the texture also, right? Because we are initially captured. So then we take the same model and line it up with the image, and then project that image, so we get the texture out of it. So rocks are done like that, plants are done like that, trunks, tree trunks are nobody has a creative imagination to go and start building trunks, like hero trunks. So it's a lot of work, it's a lot of detail, every nooks and crevice takes a lot of time to make. So you start off as a reference, and then based on the feedback, based on the art direction, you start deviating from that. So the point I wanted to emphasize on, that you cannot create something without a reference. And that is the biggest problem, you can say, people feel of the reels which are coming out from students. And these days, if you see or check out for visual effects studios, whenever they're asking for reels, they will ask for your reference, right? Yes, in roto and all, probably in a roto reel you cannot make a lot of reference, but if you're putting an animation reel together, you want to be an animation artist, you need to put your reference of yourself acting, which you've used. You cannot animate just by that, right? So that's why you will see when you see animation reels, people act it out first. They're doing performance, and then they're mimicking it or putting it in the software. Or if you're doing, say, a lighting reel and you're doing a daytime shot, what's the image if you're capturing the God rays of the light penetrating to the trees, right? That's your shot. You've seen a reference and you're trying to mimic that. So if you guys are putting a reel together, I will highly suggest that the reels which always come out on the top are the ones which have a reference in it, right? So always try to emphasize that.
And
so,
the reference should ideally be shot yourself.
Yes, that nothing trumps that, right? If we know that a person has gone and taken the pain of going out and shooting something himself, it's hands down the best reel for us. That's how, like, when I review reels, when I'm hiring people or hiring candidates, I always look for that. Has he shot it? Even if you're doing a match move or a roto reel, rather than taking a footage, you can do footages as a practice. But what you put in your reel, if you have shot yourself, I know that you at least you know the process of shooting it, putting it on your hard drive, converting it into image sequence. I know what resolution, at least you know what resolution you're shooting at, and then you're going and rotoing it out. That itself is a process, and that itself explains that you have the idea of a whole thing, rather than downloading a movie from YouTube and start rotoing it for your view. You can do that for practice, for sure, but it's much appreciated if you shoot stuff yourself. Always. Right? So, same with camera tracking, anything, any aspect of it. Modeling also, right? Like, if you're modeling a character, or you will first put your reference or your art, what you're modeling it off. Cool. So keep that in mind. So yeah, what I was saying is, a movie like this will have like n number of references. Everything has been referenced. We have a library of images which can be searched by keywords or hashtags, and if people have to make trees, they will tag search for leaves or dry leaves or green leaves or wet leaves, and there are like billions of images which will come, and then they will take references from that and start modeling and start making it. Right? So even for till date, I see the directors taking reference or giving some reference of some other movie or their contemporaries movie. Like right now, before I came for a holiday, I was working on a project where he was trying to explain us something, and he kept on explaining, and we were cross-questioning the director, saying we are not very clear what you meant. So he finally went and he showed us a footage of 2001 Space Odyssey. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Yes.
It's a classic, right? The first opening shot of the Earth, Moon lining up, right? That's what he was trying to explain, of some symmetry between the celestial objects. And then he was like, look at this, this is what my point of reference is. And now I clearly understand what he means. And the next iteration we did was bang on, because we knew exactly what he meant. Right? Yes.
So, the Spider-Verse movie.
Yes.
It was 3D and 2D
Yes.
mixed up. I can't get it how the 2D and 3D can collide.
Yeah, it was nothing but rendered to look like 2D. Yes. It was a very like advanced level of something called toon shading, where what they do is they break down the shading at very contrasting levels, like bands. So it is a full 3D film, but it has been treated to look like a 2D film. So the treatment means they have changed the way they render the movie. They have even changed the way it has been played. Normal movies are at 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
That movie is at 12 frames per second to give that choppy hand anime. That's why you will see that the movement is very snappy, right? Everything he does is very snappy, because the movie is being made purposefully at 12 fps. Certain sequences are slowed down further to give that kind of hand-drawn animation. That's a look. That's a complete aesthetic choice. But yes, it's been fully made in 3D and it's kind of very advanced.
Quite different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very. You should check out a movie called Klaus on Netflix. Beautiful film, and same kind of 2D mixed approach. But that's a very aesthetic choice. And irrespective, whatever your medium is, it could be like 2D, 3D. It's finally the content which wins, right? Like you can make masterpieces. I mean, you will see a lot of people pushing the technology, because that is going to always be an avenue for filmmakers to attract you to buy their tickets. But a quality of the film is never judged by how much bells and whistles you put on it in terms of visual effects and all. Never like that. I mean, there are animators who still are doing 2D or flash based animation, and they are considered like stop motion also. There are studios which are doing like full on stop. There's still a movie which I think recently got made, which was fully stop motion. Yeah, exactly, that one. And it won so much accolades, right? So it's always the medium. It has nothing to do with one technology being better than the other. It's who's using it and how much you can push for it to tell your story.
That said, I think your Jungle Book animals were far less convincing than the Lion King
Yeah,
ones.
exactly.
You know,
So
they just didn't look as.
That will happen. I mean, that's just the advent of every time they do something. Still, my supervisor, when he looks at Lion King, he says, I don't think we've achieved what we were looking for. And he still finds mistake. He still feels that certain things are still looking not very convincingly real. Like eyes are something which people are still struggling with in the visual effects world. It's the biggest giveaway of if it's a CG. That's why you would see there's a shot of Rafiki close up. Because that's what they're trying to show off their eyes. But the reason we have not been able to do digital humans convincingly enough yet is because of the eyes and the whole muscle structure which goes around here. Because it's so complicated. And our eyes give away a lot of our emotions. So it's going to take time. There's a new fax-based system which is facial. People have started using it. I don't have that reel, but I could have shown you. But we will get there eventually, probably in 10 years, to have fully digital humans. But that doesn't mean you're going to replace actors. Because whoever is going to end up animating a CG human needs a reference. Which means you need to be an actor, or you need to look at an actor's reference to know what you have to do with that character. Right? So people have a lot of questions. If we are doing CG humans, will we not need an actor? It's not going to be like that. Or motion capture. A lot of people have that tendency of thinking that if we do a lot of motion. So yeah, I mean, what else? Do you have any questions? I've been rambling on for an hour now, so anything, any.
In 12 years, Kabir, have you seen lessening of filmmaking moving to gaming happening? That's what we're being told is the future now.
That's a good question. Yes. So it's not lessening of filming. I have exactly the same. I'll show you a video related to that. Exactly. So what has happened is, of late the gaming technology has boomed a lot. And when I say the gaming technology, it's purely the real-time engines like the Unreal Engine or the Unity engines, which can simulate a physical environment way quicker because they do a lot of these parallel graphic card computing. So your games these days are looking way more photorealistic than they used to be like 10 years back, right? So that's what was used on Lion King also. What they are trying to do is, I was trying to talk to you about the initial layout phase or the blocking phase. Now what has happened is, when you were seeing the Lion King breakdown, you saw that there were a lot of grey shaded images, and before that there were like a lot of blocky characters which were like broken, like very low res things. So traditionally we always used to show that to the director and he used to approve it. But as and when you start showing him the final product with the fur and the final animation and lighting, he used to start not liking it, because the thing with approval is you have something in your mind, right, which you want to realize it. I have something, I'm trying to show it to you in phases, that okay, approve me this, approve me that, approve me this, approve me that. You might make a misjudgment call saying that okay, it looks fine, let's proceed. And when you proceed, you might realize, oh, it didn't look that good, let me come back and start working on the layout phase, right? And that happened a lot. That was happening, like it's been an ever-going challenge where we just keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it takes a lot of time and resource, because to render something like this, like Lion King, just to give you an idea, per frame, it takes 70 hours to render, right? Per frame. It's a 24 FPS film, so it means you're rendering 24 frames per second. It's a 2.5 hour film, right? So it's 70 hours, and that with so much of data, you are like boosting your costs. We had to use Google Cloud to render something like that. It's millions of dollars just in rendering. Now, to present you every iteration, I can't keep rendering it and showing you the final product and you keep giving me feedbacks. So what they have started doing is, they have started using game engines to quickly populate the idea, because that has the ability for more realistic renderers. So the rendering of Unreal and Unity is way better, and you can populate huge scenes. Like we are doing recently a project called Sonic the Hedgehog. You would have seen, right? That is a unique project because that guy runs like super fast, right? So within a second he can cover miles. So at the start of a shot he might be in the city, and the end of the shot he's in a jungle. To visualize such a big environment, your machine needs to be huge, right? Because you cannot have a city and all in being real-time rendered. Something like a Unity can handle it. So that's what we were doing. We were showing him the initial passes in gaming engines. It was much easier to realize huge environments, because these games, if you see, they have like game like GTA or anything has like kilometers of environment within the same thing, right? Because it's being made like that. It's optimized for that. So that is what we have also, or Visual Effects has also started adapting the gaming engines to do the first pass of visualization, and that's what was happening on Lion King. Yes.
They have to change Sonic.
Yes. Yes.
Fully.
Yes.
So does it help? It means like they have to create the whole movie again, or just the Sonic?
Just the Sonic.
And how it is possible? Like you said, it's very complicated to just manipulate a single frame. So how can they create a fully
So I
Sonic?
initially remember I talked about the build team, which builds on the character, works separately from the shot team. Sonic was a problem in its design, which was its model and its look, which only had to be fixed in its build. The moment you fix it at the build level, it will cascade into the individual shots automatically. See, that you have to think it like that. The advantage of doing visual effects in these big companies is their pipeline. That is humongously strong. Say you've been working on a project like Sonic for 2 years, right? It's a 800 shot film. You're done with 750 shots, All final, suddenly the director comes and says, hey, I don't like the look of Sonic. Can you make his eyes big? It's not about finishing those 50 shots. You have to go back and fix those 750 shots also, right? And if you work in a very linear, traditional pipeline, it's impossible because you have to go back, fix the model, fix the rig, fix everything. But what these companies are and why they are known for their big production is because they have built a pipeline where they can change things on the fly till the end, right? So they have a pipeline where if you make a change to the character at the base, it's going to automatically translate to the individual shots automatically, and it's going to populate. So it's so much automated that everything is pre-connected. So say, I don't want to again be very technical about it, but how automated it is that I'm working on a shot, and in my shot I only have Simba and say Rafiki, right? And I'm as a layout artist, so I'm a lighting artist. All I care about is the light of the scene and to render the final image. But say if Sinha gets changed by a client's feedback, I might not be aware of it also because there are like 1,000 people having these conversations about the change, right? But my system, the pipeline I work on is always pointing to the latest Simba, right? So if someone goes and updates Simba, it's going to automatically update in my shot. And overnight, a click or a switch will happen which is going to update and launch the renders without my intervention also, automatically. And next morning when I come to desk, I'll always already have the latest renders of Simba, right?
It's like we use
Whenever we So say you have a new node, yeah, you have a huge compositing network. In that you have massive layers. Think of it that all those layers are live and they are all pointing to live assets. So every morning you open the file, you might have a different comp because your live inputs are getting changed. And that's how every agency or every studio works. That's how I take care of it. That change was not a big one. Doing a character level change, the change is not the problem, but that limbo of getting stuck between back and forth of what is good and what is bad is what takes the most of the time. Once we know what we are hitting for, then it's boom, 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 done. But a lot of times it's those iterations. That's why the gaming engine helps us a lot because I can visualize huge cities in gaming engines just like that. So on Lion King now, the challenge with a movie like Lion King is none of the directors who come from the old school, because all the directors who are in the industry are all like 50 plus people at average, unless you think of the latest generation. They have never worked with computers or CG as such, right? So for them to have the confidence of making us, where they are not able to hold a camera, their DOP is not able to hold a camera, they themselves do the confidence of filmmaking. Because for them, the aspect of filmmaking is to go on a location, look at the angle, set up a camera, choose the lens, change the focus, all that. The moment they are detached from the process, they feel like they are lost. They cannot make a film. So as a studio, our effort is to bring them back to their basics. And how we are doing or how people are doing it is, I'll leave these videos with you because I don't know if I'll have time to show. But what on Lion King we called something called virtual production. So what it is you build a virtual environment. Say, take this room as a set, right? And it's a virtual set. This place doesn't physically exist, but in the movie it has to be made. It's a futuristic lab. Now, I have made it already based on some artwork in Maya. I bring it in my Unity engine, so I can visualize it from whatever angle. Think of it like a game. You're moving the camera and looking at it from all the angles. And then the director, the DOP, the VFX supervisor, they wear a VR headset. The moment they wear the VR headset, they are inside the environment. And then they can move around and like how VR works these days, right? And in the VR environment, in the virtual environment, they can go and set up the angles, right? So that's what they're doing. They are using the game engine. So think of a game like GTA, right? It's a massive game. You can do like, and you would have seen people have made movies in GTA from the games, right? It's insane because you can control the camera, you can control the character, you can change its color, texture, model. There's Hulk running, there's Thanos running in GTA because that much allowance it's giving. So it's a full-on environment where you can realize. So that's where gaming engine mostly helps. You had a question? it's like technique wise, it's not very complicated. All you need to take care of is there are steps. So first thing is, if you have to do a huge wings like that, it was not a small wing, right? It's a huge. She's like the alpha of her bird kingdom. So those wings will have some physical impact on her body motion. So on set, you don't have the wings, so you cannot let the actor move freely. You need to first figure out how big those wings are. What will be the weight of the wings if they were in real? So say I assume like say 15 kgs is what the wing weighs. I need to pack her with a 15 kg suit so that I know what is her radius of movement. Obviously, with such big wings, she cannot go very close to a wall, right? Or a character cannot come very close to her. When she flaps, there needs to be enough distance for her to do that. So on set, I will first create a practical replica of that wing with pretty much similar physical size, dimension, weight, so that first she gets to act with it. I shoot her with that. Then I go to the post, and first thing I do is I paint those props out. It could have been made with metal wires or plastic or whatever. I paint it out. That's where prep comes, right? I paint it out completely, and then what I do is I do a very accurate scan of Angelina Jolie, either through the photographic process I showed, or they have them advanced. There's something called a scanning mechanism where the actor goes into a lab and gets himself scanned completely. So you get a 3D model. That's a very common process these days. You get a 3D model of the actor. We then create a complete replica of Angelina in 3D, and then attach the wings to her. And then do our animation, our fur simulation, our feather simulation on that. And then when you line up Angelina's model on the plate, because it's going to line up, it's made from her own scan, the wings are automatically going to look pretty much the same, right? Like that's the step-by-step process, and then you work on the look there, the physicality of the wings, feathers, how they ruffle and all that. So yeah, to answer.
So to come back to that, I'm asking you, have you seen a reduction in overall projects, or the scale of the projects, or the scale of the budget getting reduced? Because obviously, thanks to piracy, the return on investment is lower.
Okay, so coming to the business aspect of it, filmmaking as a business has not gone down. It has changed its revenue stream. So yes, off late, digital platforms have overtaken Netflix, Amazon have overtaken, and that's why the footfall in the actual theaters is way less. But have people started watching less films? No, it's actually triple fold. The amount the speed at which we are consuming content these days is way more than what we used to. Earlier we used to go for one movie a month. These days I want like a movie, like 3 movies a day. That's how hungry we are, right? We are binge watching an entire season a day, which takes a whole year to make. Right? And Narcos takes like 1 year to make those 8 episodes, and we just sit one Sunday and finish it, and then we're asking what is the next thing I want to watch. Right? So yes, the amount of filmmaking is way more than what is used to happen. But since it's happening at such a large scale, people are trying to develop more financially viable methods of making it faster. The main reason the whole gaming thing is coming is because it's saving us a lot of cost of pre-installation. Or else these movies like used to take a lot of money to pre-visualize first to come into the actual production. And now what studios are going into the model is like they are pre-vising a lot of property. They have a lot of properties. They're sitting on like n number of scripts. They are making very cheap versions of these properties in very low cost gaming engines, and they're showing it to the audience. They do something called a friends and family screen. They get a feedback, and based on that they keep tweaking the script, narration, everything, and then out of say 10 projects they will greenlit one project, right? And that is the project that goes onto the floor and gets, those 9 projects might never see a light of the day. But the cost associated to previous projects has to be minimal for them to ideate a lot of ideas, and that's how they do the risk management. So Netflix, like you see, right, it's producing content, like quality content every day, but it's not like whatever they look at or start it becomes. They look at 100 ideas to narrow down to that one house of cards, right? But those 99 ideas have to be taken to a certain level for them to take a call that doesn't work out. Let's bank of it. But the money associated with those making those 99 properties is what they're trying to reduce, and that is where this. So filmmaking has increased a lot more, but the revenue stream and the cost associated with it also grown a lot more, which they are trying to. If you see business, film as a business is a very unique business, right? And that the reason the studios are popping up all over the world is because they are also trying to get tax rebates and trying to survive in the industry. All these companies, MPCs and all, they don't get profit sharing even if like a $1 billion movie, it has nothing to do with what the company has because it's on a fixed model. Vice versa, if it tanks on the box office, we don't care. We paid for our service. The studio is taking the risk, right? And that's what they do. They don't make movies. Disney doesn't own a single artist in their studio. They outsource everything, right? From they buy properties, they buy stories, they buy books, they attach writers to it, they attach concept development artists to it, they attach directors to it, and then they go and buy teams. They hire vendors, so they buy like a VFX department, production team, and they attach a property. They get the film done, and they're done. But what they're left with is that property, which is what they are making money off, right? That's what they own. And Disney is like a behemoth in the industry right now. They own like 80% of the property. They make money off merchandising and write films and whatever. I mean, I'm not going into the business aspect of it, but no, there is no reduction. The other way around, what we are seeing is there's a huge boom in TV streaming platforms. The budgets of the TV streaming platforms have increased so much that they are pretty much on par with making a full, like a Game of Thrones is almost at par with any other international film, and they are making a sequel to that now. So those are much better projects to work on because they last for a longer time. There are more studios also want to work on those because they work for like 4 or 5 seasons. That's 4 or 5 years of solid work for you. With pre-production included, you are solidly safe for like 7 years. It's not just one project which comes and goes, right? So MPC as a business also has diversified, and they are now going and picking up those kind of movies because people have started watching it. But if you see, nowhere they have compromised. They know that you are watching it on a mobile or a tablet or probably a small TV, but nowhere they are compromising on the visual aspect of it. Visually, these movies are still way better looking than what we were looking at 5 years back. Right? So they are still shooting it in 4K, 8K. Netflix is like crazy about making things in 4K. 1917. I mean, 4K, true 4K, nobody does. It's shit expensive. So what they do is they do these advanced stretching algorithms to upscale a 2K image to a 4K and they stream it like that. Nothing is true 4K. Because true 4K is like damn expensive. It's data intensive, it's heavy, and it's really expensive. But Netflix is the only company in the industry right now which has the budget to do 4K because they are safeguarding themselves for future because they know that they can monitor in 5 years. So they are investing in 4K content right now so that they can upscale and sell you as an 8K image. It's in a very good state right now. Yeah, why not? I mean, it's Indian VFX has nothing to do with the quality of the artist, it's the budget. It's purely the budget. Right? Your audience here is just India. So obviously you need to scale your production to that. Your production will be like, budget will be like 40 crores to make a film. Obviously here the star power rules a lot. So in that 40 crore, 20 crore will be for the actor itself. So VFX will get a budget of like 5 crores, 6 crores, right? Compared to a Hollywood production, which they have a bigger audience. They can make a 1 billion, which is about 6,000 crores of a movie. So obviously they will make movies which are, the cost of making a movie will be 1,000 crores. In that they will keep a budget of 200 crores, 300 crores for visual effects. Right? So which is like almost $50 million. So that's why it's just the budget. And yes, there is talent. This is art which was originated there. We are coming up to speed to it. VFX was not made here, right? So it takes time. They have invented more because they were open to those kind of stories way earlier. We were still stuck. I mean, just compare the movies we were doing in 80s and 90s compared to what they were doing. Jurassic Park was done in like 92. right? We were doing Dule Raja in MTD. So nothing bad about it. Nothing bad about it. Just the stories we were catering to is way different than what they were catering to. Since they were catering to kind of aliens and Terminator movies, they got to push the boundary. We were pushing it in some other sense. We were pushing it in comic or whatever you can say. Now, of late, after Bahubali and 2.0 and these movies have come, there's a sudden interest of making mythologies, right? Karan Johar is making also mythologies, making Kalank, is making Tank, and Bhanjali is making, and those movies are doing a lot of VFX, like insane amount of VFX. So there are studios who are pretty much in the industry on their own, just picking up Bollywood projects and doing good level of work. Red Chillies is there, NYFX Wala, Pixion, they're like Makuta, Firefly, they are all doing like full on projects and they have a lot of work for the next 5 years. So it's I think compared to when I started, it's in a better state right now.
But none of the foreign films are doing work for Indian films?
Yes, they are.
Which one?
MPC is currently working on Rajamouli's next project. Okay. A small sequence.
That's a new thing.
Yeah, it is. Because, why? Because Rajamouli's budget got increased. He suddenly got China and Japan as his audience. His movies are not only, they are earning way more money in China and Japan than they are earning in India. His movie, Iga, the Makhi, made 10 times more money in Japan than it made in India. Dangal made more money in China than it made in India, right? So suddenly the filmmakers have realized Thugs of Hindustan, which was such a super flop in India, was a hit in China and it had recovered its money and plus surpassed profit because of Chinese market. So since they have a market, now they know that they can aim for those 500, 600 crores return, they are okay to spend a 50 crore on visual effects. So now movies like War have a lot of VFX, like a lot of replacement action shots and stuff like that. So it's just a matter of time. If we make universally approachable films, which can be seen by the Western audience as well as China and everything, our budgets will increase tenfold. Obviously, then VFX will get the same amount of treatment.
Sir, Tanaji, which came recently,
Yes.
it's almost like it's made totally, the backgrounds, everything is digital.
Yes.
But in the end, you can literally feel the horse as a 3D model
Yes.
in the last sequence. So why did you left that part? I mean, they should have.
Budget changes.
In a very logical manner. If a movie like Lion King takes 2,000 people 3 years to make, Tanaji would have. I mean, I know the studio it worked on, it was that NYVFX Wala only. It has a strength of like 300 people, and they worked in for like 8 months. You're squeezing so much into so less, right? Yes, they can take time to finesse those things, but that's going to cost money to the studio, which they don't want to bear right now. So they are just trying to get it to the level that itna chalega. They don't have the attitude of pushing the boundary because Indian audience also has to ask for more. You need to voice out that, hey, I can see that issue. Then the producers will like, hey, people are spotting our errors. We need to get our game up. It has come up a lot, no doubt about that. But they feel that you are still invested in Ajay Devgan's acting more than what the horse looks like. So they don't want to care about it. They are like, just, ho gaya na, chal raha hai. If movies get made where your central protagonist or antagonist are CG characters, which drives the film, that is when like Robo, like the final fight of Akshay Kumar, that was a big spectacle. Didn't turn out to be as like big I was thinking, but it was not a bad attempt. Though it got later done by DNEG in Montreal, and London also stepped in to finish the project because it was huge. The project was huge. It was impossible for any Indian studio to pull that off. But yes, all those minor things which you're seeing is just that someone didn't get enough time, I feel that, to finish it. If you can spot it, for sure people who have made it can also spot it. Right? Exactly. That's what. How much our family will be bothered about it.
Like you watched Tanaji, it was absolutely really 3D. Right? But I went and said, "Ye kya ho raha hai?"
Exactly.
So all the scenes are they were planning for that. The 3D object moving like this.
Yeah.
इतना भी कहने के उसको shoot करें तो.
Exactly. That's the thing, right? But then think like how many people are bothered about it. Nobody has written or talked about it. All they were talking about how great the movie is and how it.
Talking about the pipeline, they must be having a pipeline also,
Yes.
right? So अगर उन्होंने पहले उसका layering और compositing करा तो last sequence उसमें क्यों जोड़ा? वो तो important है बहुत सारा.
Correct. So the entire movie never gets made at once. It's broken into schedules. So it might happen that 8 months, the first 7 months was spent in some other sequence. All they were left with is for that sequence. That happens a lot. I worked on shit projects like, I don't know if you saw the battle of a project called Cats, which came. And the funny thing is this, our studio only worked on Cats, and it's the worst VFX movie of this year. And the Oscar for best VFX also was taken by our studio. Right? So it's not like the artists who worked on Cats were bad. It's that the studio was messed up. They themselves were not sure what they were making. It was a shit of a project. Like 2,000 shots, insane amount of characters, no time. Entire thing of Cats was done in like 9 months. So it's a misfire. Then a lot of it also depends on the creative judgment of the people involved, their past experience. The budget is one aspect of it, is what I'm saying. But then who is the director? Who does it bother to him that cost looks weird or not? Some people it does. Like people like Spielberg, Cameron, they will not let go of even one hair if they have to. That's how good they are. Certain people, like certain directors, are not bothered about it. All they are bothered about is how is the hero looking and how is he making the entry. It depends on the nature of the job. Plus the people who are making it, how skilled they are. As I said, VFX as an art is not our forte because we never invented it. We are adapting our technology. So it's going to take time for us to come up to that speed. But filmmaking is something we are at par with Hollywood. We are at par, for sure. It's just that, again, we are treating to a different audience. A lot of the movies are made the way they are made because people are asking for it. There will be no Salman Khan movie made if people don't ask for it. It's just that people want it. People are making it. Yes. As I said, I was part of the layout part. So the first visualization we do is done by us, just to love the idea. If he doesn't like it, he's going to change it, and that's going to not cost a lot of money. Everything is super light. We can just turn the thing and make a new alteration. So my exact part is layout.
What did you do in Kabir?
I was mostly involved on set in terms of capturing a lot of data. As I said, references are important, so we capture a lot of lighting information, texture, color, all that. I did that, and then I did a match move, and that's a process called rotomation, where if you are interacting with a CG character, right? Like in Life of Pi, there was a scene where he runs his fingers through the tiger's fur at the end when he's patting him, right? Those heavy interaction shots require a lot of rotomation, where you have to build a model of that character and animate it exactly to the plate, so that very the character. I think if I would have had a 3D software, I would have been able to explain better. But that's what my main contribution on Life of Pi was. So Jungle Book also was layout / previs / camera tracking and on-set work. So 1917 is the only one which I have not done on-set for because I was involved in another project that time. But mostly it starts off with going on set, capturing data, like lighting. Like if I have to do a VFX shot here, the stuff I'll be interested on is the dimension of the room, the light sources. Because say a character has to be here, right? And he needs to get integrated into the environment. He will be only integrated when he looks connected to the environment, which means light is bouncing off him. He's looking at the light is coming from the right direction. So the two main key or the three key are these two bulbs and this, right? So I need to know how far they are, what intensity they are beaming at, what's the size of this, because I'm going to go back into my software and exactly recreate these things. I'm going to place a light that far from my character, I'm going to place a source that far, then I need to probably, these are so big brown walls, they are going to cast some kind of brown tint on my face, right? At a very subtle level, they will do. So I need to know the values of these for it to cast that brown tint on my face.
So what tools do you use for
camera?
this?
That's it. Camera. I mean, there are some advanced things, but at a core level, it's just the camera. So for me to capture the light, you need to be very good at with photography. But for you to capture the lighting information, when I want to capture the lighting information, what I'm looking for, I want to capture the brightest source of light in this room to the darkest spot. So the brightest is, say, the tube light, some 4000 kelvins or whatever the value is. And the darkest spot will be like one of the corners there is the darkest spot, right? I cannot capture that in one image. When I mean, if you've used a DSLR, you would have seen that when you browse through an image details, you will see something called a histogram, right? Always make sure that none of those values are clipping above 1 or below 0. The moment they're clipping above 1 and 0 is, you've lost information there. So if I overexpose, I shoot at or most of your photographs you will see you shoot someone against the sun is like superly bright. Because you've lost information, the sensor was not able to convert that into actual color value because it's just too bright for it, right? So if I have to capture the brightest spot to the darkest, I cannot do that in one image, right? Because the dynamic range of my sensor is not enough to capture that. Either this will blow out or this will go like super dark. So when I check the histogram, that's how I review photographs. I mean, I do it technically. The compositional aesthetic part is very different. But if I have to review any of your work, I'll check, okay, how are your values working? Have you captured every... And when I say have you captured everything, it means if I click an image, take it into Nuke or any software, take that color picker tool, just put it on that pixel and see, are you reading a RGB value or not? It means if you are reading a RGB value, it means the sensor has captured some color there. But if it's clipping out, it will be 000 or 111. It means pure white or pure black. It means it has failed, and then nothing is pure white and black in nature. It has some color. So it means you lost that information. So if I have to do this, I have to do something called HDR, high dynamic range, which means I do multiple exposures of this. Now, how many exposures will I need to do is how fine I want to go into the color gamut. Probably for a room like this, because it's very contrasty, I have super brights and super darks, I'll probably do 5 exposures. 5 exposures mean like super dark, mid, and super exposed, and then brackets between. You have bracketing tools, right? In your camera, you can do like multiple. And these days, everything is HDR anyways. So I'm just giving an idea. Yes. Yes.
It's like, have you seen Your Name, the movie?
My name.
Your Name.
Your Name. Okay.
It's a Japanese movie.
Okay.
It's fully based on 2D, but the sky they made it totally look like it's 3D.
Okay.
But I think they only do the 2D work. So how they can generate a 3D like image from the 2D? Have they used any computer techniques or any, like you say, VR, anything like that?
When you say, is it because of the rendering of it or the perspective and dimension of it? A thing can look 3D because it looks super real, or it can look 3D because it has very accurate perspective. What is it in this case? Okay. Yes. Okay. How well they would have done it. See, I mean, I have to see the content first to judge myself, and there are n number of techniques to do it. There is no rule which says a 2D movie has to be done in 2D, right? And any which ways, anything which is done in 2D these days is still done on computer, right? So it could be Flash, Toon Boom, or whatever the 2D softwares are. And those softwares themselves have some kind of dimensionalization also. You can do certain 3D objects in Flash also, right? So the line of what is 2D and what is 3D is very blurred, right? Yes, in our traditional mind, we keep saying, okay, 3D is something which is Maya and all, where we can rotate the camera and look around things. 2D is purely like Flash, where everything is in one dimension. But it doesn't stop you, if you're making a film in 2D, to do certain elements in 3D. It doesn't stop. Or, matter of fact, use certain images. You don't need to paint everything. A sky is a sky. You don't need to go and paint a sky. If you are going for aesthetic, you can actually use a photograph of a sky. And a lot of people do that. A lot of these films, like Lion King, right? None of the sky is rendered or somebody has gone and painted a sky. These are actual photographs. Just composited it like that. Right? Yeah. Most of the time. Just think of it in a very logical way. I have a beautiful image of a sky. Why will I spend time to recreate it? unless I'm going for a very specific look, or else I'll use the same image in my shot, right?
And how important is drawing still?
Okay, so it depends which stream you are finally going into. VFX as such, as I said, there are like different departments, right? If you end up in a department like modeling, animation, you will require drawing skills. Yes, not because you have to draw every day, just because even today when I see the animators receiving feedback, they have done a pass of a first shot. The supervisor just takes the footage and just draws over it of what he feels the pose should be like. So probably he made a pose like this, the supervisor will draw it to be like this to give more weight of the leg, right? So he is still using his drawing skills to sell his sense of, and it could be stick figures, right? Same with modeling. Why they say it's important to draw is not because you have like super anatomical drawing. They are looking that have you got a sense of volume and form. When I don't know how many of you modeled in Maya or ZBrush. Everyone knows how a skull looks like, right? Like a skull. Everyone knows how it looks like. When you start modeling it, you realize how difficult it is. And if I ask everyone to model a skull, everyone will have his own version of it, right? Just because it's really difficult to log that form. And every artist, if you see, spends like ages to build the bones first, because that is where the sense of volume and form is coming. So if you are a trained modeler, you will need to have that understanding, which can be enhanced if you have good drawing skills. But saying that, I have seen modelers who were not great artists, but somehow they were more comfortable using digital tools. But there are streams like Tech and FX, simulation based, which don't require much drawing skills, but they need to be very technical. And that is also touch base on that. If you end up in visual effects, you have to be technical, or else very soon you will see that you've hit the ceiling of your career and you're not able to progress further, because at some level you need to be good technically. By technical, I mean it can be a bit of coding. Python is the most common language these days, or just understanding of the technical aspects of filmmaking, like doing read times or pushing the shot ahead in frames, all that, like small things, right? But you have to kind of accept that, yes, though I'm in a very artistic field, though I might feel that I'm doing the most creative job, at one aspect of it, it's a very technical job also. Like when I was talking about these exposure values and all that, these are technical terms. And when I review work, most of the time I review it on technical grounds only. Because creative is not my call, it's my soup's or my director's call, right? All I can do is technically check the image if it's correct or not. Cool? So I think I will leave these videos with you guys. Whenever you have time, make sure you go and watch. But you should not limit yourself to that. All I did is download it from YouTube. So there's an n number of other videos you can download it. Visual effects, some of you might end up in it, some of you might not, right? But eventually, I hope all of you end up somewhere in filmmaking, right? It can be any aspect of filmmaking. You can be on shoot production person or not. But whatever the concept of filmmaking, as Shivani asked me, has not changed. Honestly, it has not. It's just the medium has changed, the tools have changed. But till date, the storytellers are the same people, the directors are the same people who were shooting with film like 20 years back. And they are good at what they are doing. So all you need to find that one thing which you're good at. I don't know rigging, I don't know modeling. It's been years since I've modeled something. So if you ask me to model a Simba, I cannot do that. But in my company, that's not expected from me. So just remember that I see a lot of time people ending up a lot of their resource or a lot of their energy on doing everything at a mediocre level. But nobody is going to hire you to make a Simba, right? They're going to hire you to do one aspect of Simba. You just need to be good at that. And then you will obviously organically find your way. And also you will see that in India, to crack into the industry, it's going to be a very basic start, right? It's going to be those long hours of, but those are very important. That's going to lay your foundation. You're just not going to join a job and start making creative calls. change the shot like that, change the camera like that. No, that takes years to do. Like after being 12 years, I can take a call like that. Okay, can you try a different lens? Or probably change the framing of the shot. But it's not going to happen in the first 5 years, right? You have to work yourself up ladder. So I see a lot of people kind of dropping out because of that, because they feel they're doing something which they never signed up for. But that's how it is. Everything is like that. You have to work those basic jobs. But if you are good at it, you will grasp a very solid understanding, and then you can build. Once you build the foundation, then you can branch off to whatever you want. This will always stay with you. It's a very skill-based industry. Whatever skills, like photography is my kind of my expertise, and the same logic of photography which I apply in my DSLR, I can apply to a film camera, to a Maya camera, to a Houdini camera, to any camera, because the fundamentals of how a camera works or reacts against a light, how a lens works against a sensor is the same. So it won't take me much time. A lot of people get stuck with this software also, right? Should I learn Nuke? Should I learn Maya? Not important. In my world, I'll tell you my story. I was in Rhythm News, and that company only used to work in their own proprietary softwares, because they were from an age when they were not so advanced market software. So all they did is invest in those software. And we were working there, we were thinking we'll never get a job outside, because all we know is how to work in their software. They had their own software called Voodoo. I switched my job after like 5-6 years. I was a lead there, and I joined a new company. I was like, fuck, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to adapt. It took me just like 15 days to pick up a new software. Because the fundamental is the same, right? It's the same, like if you know PowerPoint, you can do like Linux's free version of PowerPoint, LibreOffice or OpenOffice, because the concept is same, right? Or Excel. If you know how to make a sheet and draw formulas, whatever package of Excel or Google Sheet or you want, the fundamental of running Excel is the same. So it's not gonna, don't get very software dependent. Whatever you're comfortable with, which you have access the most, go for it. Editing also, I mean, there are like free mobile software which you can. So as an exercise, since I gave such a long speech, if any one of you interested, what you can do is just do a small 30 to 45 second clip of a car chase in Maya, if you're comfortable with it. Very blocky buildings, simple road, blocky car. We are not looking for the details of how good the car looks and all, right? Just an exercise of how you will block your shot, how you start, how will you show the intro, what's your establishing shot, are you going for aerial, are you going for a lower angle, what's the choice of lens. Now, first look for references. Where have you seen a kick-ass car chase? Go for it. Now, analyze that Fast and Furious, like, since he said Fast and Furious, there's a beautiful sequence in the fifth one where they are chasing a bank or they're taking a bank vault out, right? Now go shot by shot and see what perspective it is shot from. What shots are inside the car, what are outside the car. Certain shots are from the point of view of a crowd on the pavement, certain are from the aerial, from the helicopter. Like fast action moving shots, very close up, low angle of the wheels of the actor with his whole emotion, right? So just lay out a 30-second or 40-second car chase yourself. It will help you a lot. You will automatically see that how much you will start analyzing films. You will then go back and check, why did he switch the car here, or why did he, and then you will get a sense of why my, and then whatever you're done with, show it to someone else and see what impact he gets out of that. Does he feel like it's a thrilling car chase? And you will realize that that thrill will not come from how good you've textured it, and you don't need to texture anything. Just the motion of the car and your cameras can sell a huge thing, right? And show it to someone else and see if he's getting thrilled. You will be very happy with your work. That always happens. You will be like, this is like the best thing. Show it to another person who's not your friend, and you will realize that it's shit. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kabir.
Thank you.